The war in the stars had burned for many years, and ships of metal and fire moved across the endless night. Human fleets fought for survival, and alien armadas pressed forward without mercy. Battles filled the void with wreckage, and voices of loss carried across channels. In this sea of destruction, one small figure drifted, a human child inside a broken escape pod. The glass cracked, the oxygen thin, the heartbeat slow but still alive. The pod spun slowly, lost between the hulks of shattered warships. No one saw, no one cared until a ship unlike the others came near. It was an alien vessel, not large, not mighty, only a patrol craft moving through wreckage in search of survivors. The crew inside spoke in low voices, their language sharp and strange. They scanned for signals. They expected only broken machines, yet the signal of the child flashed weakly on their screen. At first they thought it was debris, just another empty pod, but the scan showed a beating heart. Very small, very fragile. The alien captain frowned. Saving a human was dangerous. Humans were enemies. To help one was to risk war. Still, the captain gave the order. The pod was pulled aboard. The door opened with a hiss. The air smelled of smoke and metal. Inside they found the child, pale and weak, eyes closed, clutching a small blanket. The alien crew stood silent, their faces unreadable. They had seen humans only in battle. Armored and armed, not like this. So small, so helpless, the child stirred. A faint cry escaped. A sound so soft that even the hardened warriors felt it in their chests. The captain stepped forward, tall and strange in form. With dark eyes glowing in the dim light, he reached down, careful and slow, lifting the child in strong arms. The child did not resist. The child only breathed and clung. The crew watched in silence. They feared what would happen. They knew humans would never forgive their enemies, and yet, here was one life in their hands. The captain said nothing, but his grip was gentle. He wrapped the child in a silver cloth and carried them to the med bay. Machines hummed, air flowed, warmth returned. The child opened their eyes and for the first time saw the alien face above. Wide eyes filled with confusion, then trust. A small hand reached up and touched the alien's armor. The crew gasped, but the captain remained still. Outside, the war still raged. Fleets tore each other apart. No one noticed the small alien vessel hiding in the shadows. Tending to a single human child, the crew argued in whispers. Some said, "Release the child back into space before humans find out." Others said, "End its life quickly. It was safer." But the captain silenced them, his voice firm. This child would live even if it meant risk. The crew obeyed, not out of agreement but out of loyalty. They knew their captain was not a man to doubt once he had chosen. Hours passed, the child gained strength. Food and water given. Soft light warmed their skin. The alien captain stayed near, watching every breath, though his face was cold. His eyes showed something more, perhaps curiosity, perhaps pity, perhaps a memory of his own children lost to war. No one asked, no one dared. The crew only worked in silence. A message came across the channels. Human fleets searching for survivors. Every alien ship was to retreat or destroy evidence. The crew panicked if humans found them with the child. It could mean doom. But the captain refused to abandon. Instead, he changed course, flying deeper into the wreckage where signals were weak, hiding in the shadows of broken battleships. The vessel crept like a ghost through steel bones of fallen giants. The child slept again, unaware of the danger, clutching the silver cloth close, small breaths soft against the noise of engines. The captain stood watch, heavy armor shining faint in the light. His thoughts hidden, but his decision clear. This human would not die, not while he had power to protect it. Far away among human command ships, no one yet knew. They counted losses, they prepared new fleets, their eyes on victory and vengeance, not knowing that a single act of mercy had just begun. One alien ship, one captain, one human child. A choice made in silence that would echo across the stars. The vessel drifted away unseen, carrying its fragile passenger into the unknown. The crew tense, the captain unshaken, and the child safe for now outside the war-consumed everything. But inside that small ship, a seed of something else had been planted. Something neither side had expected. The stars shone cold, the wreckage floated endless. The battle still raged in distant sectors. But in this quiet place, one story had already changed. A rescue no one saw. A secret no one told. And a bond that neither human nor alien could yet understand. The war would continue, but so too would this life, carried by strange hands through the dark, toward a fate none could predict. The news did not come in silence. It came in waves across the great networks of war, flashing through satellites, hidden relays, and human command stations. One fragment of footage, one blurred transmission, An alien officer stepping from a patrol ship holding a small human child in his arms. The image spread like fire, carried by frightened whispers at first, then by stunned reports, then by headlines across every colony. In the command center of the fleet, admirals leaned close over screens, their brows dark. Some believed it was a trick, a cruel deception made by enemies to stir confusion. Others believed it was real, and if real, it meant something no one had expected. The room filled with argument, voices sharp, hands striking tables. The war had taught them that aliens were ruthless, that mercy did not exist among them, and yet here was proof of the opposite, a single act that shattered years of hate. Soldiers in the barracks gathered around small hollow screens, their armor still stained with oil and smoke. They watched the moment again and again, the alien captain lifting the weak child, wrapping them with care. One soldier whispered that the alien held the child like a father. Another spat on the floor and said it was only a trap. Their laughter was uneasy, for none of them knew what to believe. On the colonies, among civilians tired of endless war, the reaction was different. Mothers saw the child and wept. Fathers clenched their fists with anger and hope. Children pointed and asked questions their parents could not answer. Why would the enemy save one of us? Why would they risk everything to protect one small life? Voices rose, debates filled the streets. Some demanded revenge, others demanded peace. All eyes turned to the council that ruled humanity. Inside the grand chamber of the Human Council, light streamed down on heavy seats of stone and metal. Every leader present, their faces stern. They spoke of strategy, they spoke of risk. But behind their words was fear. This rescue could change the war more than any weapon. If humans accepted it, the enemy might appear less monstrous. If humans denied it, they would appear blind to truth. One counselor rose and said that kindness must be answered with kindness. Another shouted that mercy was weakness. The hall echoed with their voices. Meanwhile, the child recovered slowly under alien care, and though humans did not yet know, whispers from scouts hinted that the alien crew had not harmed the child. The captain stayed close, the child breathed stronger, and this story began to take shape as more than rumor. Evidence spread, images leaked, and the universe itself seemed to pause and watch. Back in the barracks, soldiers who had once sworn to kill without mercy now argued. One said if even one enemy could show kindness, then maybe not all were devils. Another cursed and said such softness would get them all killed. Fists flew, friendships cracked. The footage played in silence above their heads. In the colonies, people began lighting candles, small gestures of hope. They told their children a story, not of war and blood, but of a child saved by strange hands. The people did not wait for the council's word. They were already changing, their hearts softening, their voices demanding something new. The council saw this. They knew they could not ignore the people. They had to answer, for if they denied the truth, they would lose trust. But if they embraced it, they risked anger from their fleets. So they hesitated, every word weighed like a weapon, every decision a possible spark for greater war. News channels repeated the same image until it burned into every mind. The alien captain's dark eyes, the child's hand on his armor. That one moment replayed until it was no longer just a scene. It became a symbol, and symbols were dangerous. Symbols moved armies, symbols broke empires. The enemy empires too began to take notice. Their spies carried word that humans were shaken. Their generals debated. Some laughed and said it was nothing, just a single accident. But others frowned and whispered that it was dangerous. For if humans began to see the enemy as more than monsters, the war could shift in ways none could predict. Across human space, the tension grew, not from battles or fleets, but from a story that would not die. And everywhere, people waited for the Human Council to speak, to decide whether this single act of mercy meant nothing, or whether it meant everything. Finally, after many long nights, the council summoned the leaders of the fleet, their faces gray, their voices heavy. The broadcast was prepared. The galaxy held its breath. Screens across colonies, barracks, and ships flickered to life, all eyes turned, waiting. The speaker of the council rose, their voice deep and clear. They spoke of war, of loss, of duty. But then their tone shifted. They spoke of the image seen by all, the alien captain saving a child. They said that humanity had faced monsters for too long. But when one showed mercy, the great chamber of the Human Council was never silent. Even in times of peace, it echoed with voices. But on this day, the sound was like a storm. Commanders, admirals, and governors all gathered, the air heavy with smoke from long hours of debate. On the central screen, the image played once more, the alien captain carrying the human child, the child's small hand pressing against alien armor. Some saw hope in it, others saw danger. but all of them knew it could not be ignored. The Speaker of the Council rose, a figure draped in dark robes, face lined with years of war. He lifted his hand and the room fell into tense silence. He spoke of the cost of endless battles, the millions dead, the colonies burned, the fleets shattered. He spoke of humanity's will to endure. But then his tone shifted. His voice deeper, sharper. He spoke of the rescue, of the mercy shown when none was expected, and he asked the question none dared before. What did it mean when the enemy saved instead of killed? The word struck like lightning. Some counselors shouted at once, saying it was a trick, a shadow play to weaken resolve, but others leaned forward, eyes burning, saying perhaps it was proof that even in war not all enemies were monsters, and if one act of kindness existed, then maybe there could be more. The hall thundered with voices, echo after echo, until the speaker raised his hand again. The speaker declared that mercy shown to a child could not be denied, and if humanity was to prove itself worthy of survival, it could not ignore such an act. Therefore, from this day, the alien species who had saved the child would be placed under humanity's protection. Any attack against them would be answered as an attack against humanity itself. Gasps filled the chamber. Even those who had expected something bold were shaken. Protection was not a light word. It was a promise of blood. It was a vow of steel. It meant human fleets would fight and die not only for their own survival, but for the survival of the very aliens they had once called enemies. The announcement spread within minutes, carried by secure channels, then by civilian broadcasts. Across ships and colonies the message appeared. Soldiers stared at screens in disbelief. Some cursed and spat, calling it weakness. Others felt their hearts stir with something they had not felt in years. A strange and fragile hope in the colonies, where parents feared every day for their children. The reaction was overwhelming. Cheers rose, tears flowed, candles were lit. People cried out that for once humanity had chosen to answer kindness with kindness. But in the fleets on the front lines, not all were pleased. Captains of warships clenched their jaws, knowing their orders now bound them to protect those who once fired upon them. Their crews restless, divided, some ready to obey, others seething with rage. The seeds of conflict grew not only between species but within humanity itself. On alien worlds, the shock was just as great. The protected species received the news with disbelief. Many of their leaders thought it a trap, a way for humans to bind them under control. Yet others whispered that perhaps it was real, that perhaps their small act of saving one human child had opened a door no warship could ever close. Still, their enemies in the galaxy reacted with fury. Rival empires saw this protection as a threat. They began to plot, their generals moving fleets in secret, their spies whispering in the dark. Meanwhile, the alien captain who had made the choice still traveled through the stars, his small ship hidden among wreckage, the human child at his side. He did not yet know of the council's decision, did not yet know that his name was already becoming legend. His crew, once uneasy, now spoke in hushed voices, wondering what price would come of their captain's mercy, wondering if the humans would truly protect them, or if greater danger was yet to arrive. Back in human space, the council worked quickly. Orders spread to fortresses and fleets. An entire armada was reassigned to guard the alien species. Warships moved into position around their homeworld. Shields raised, cannons primed, their presence like a wall of steel declaring to the galaxy that humanity had made its choice. This was not mercy alone, it was power. It was warning. It was the beginning of a new kind of war. The people cheered, but the admirals worried. They knew humanity was stretching itself thin. To protect another species meant risking more battles, risking more losses, but the decision had been made, and once declared it could not be undone. Humanity's honor now tied to the survival of those aliens. Their fate bound together. The child, unaware of the storms rising across the stars, laughed softly in the alien ship, their voice small but bright, their smile a fragile light in the dark. The captain watched in silence, and though he did not speak it aloud, he knew the child was no longer just a life saved. The child was now a symbol. The child was the spark that forced two great peoples to stand side by side, whether they wished it or not. And as the fleets gathered, as the enemies whispered, as the galaxy trembled with the weight of this new promise, one truth burned clear. Humanity had drawn a line in the stars. They had declared protection not for power, not for conquest, but for the life of one innocent child. And because of that one choice, the future itself had shifted. No empire could ignore it. No enemy could forget it. No ally could mistake it. The war was far from over, but the story had changed. Humanity was no longer fighting only for themselves. Now they carried the weight of another species upon their shoulders, and in the silence between the battles, The legend began to grow, a legend that would echo through the stars, whispering that mercy could be more powerful than fire. The stars were quiet, but the silence was false. Beneath the calm of distant suns, fleets were moving. Whispers carried from one empire to another. Humanity had drawn a line in the stars. They had declared protection for a former enemy, and the galaxy trembled at the sound of those words. In the vast reaches of space, human warships gathered near the alien homeworld, their hulls glimmering like knives of steel. Thousands of guns pointed outward, shields woven together in a fortress of fire. Every day more ships arrived, cruisers, destroyers, even dreadnoughts. The sight was enough to make nearby empires nervous. Humanity was not just protecting. Humanity was daring anyone to test them. On the protected world itself, the aliens lived with both relief and fear. Relief that human fleets now guarded their skies. Fear that this protection made them a target. Their streets filled with rumors. Their children played under the shadow of human battleships that blotted out the sun. Some elders said the humans would enslave them next. Others said the humans were saviors. The truth hung in the balance, but far away, in the dark councils of rival empires, plans were already taking shape. One warlord slammed his fist on the table, declaring that humans had grown arrogant, that they had no right to decide which species lived or died. Another general nodded, whispering that if humanity could protect one alien race today, tomorrow they might protect another. Until their power spread unchecked, they decided to test this new vow, to strike the protected species and see if humanity's promise was real. Back in human space, the rescued child grew under alien care. Their bodies still frail but stronger each day. They learned words in the alien tongue. They laughed. They reached for the captain's hand without fear. The crew watched with unease, for in that laughter they saw the bond deepening. They knew this child was no longer just a symbol, but a bridge, and bridges in war were always dangerous. The human council too felt the weight of their promise. Messages poured in from commanders at the front, asking how long they must stand guard, asking how much blood would be shed to protect aliens. But the council did not waver. The speaker's voice was cold and clear. Humanity had sworn protection, and protection would be given. To break that word now would shatter all faith. Still unease spread among soldiers, among citizens, even among the fleets themselves. Many remembered comrades lost to the very species they now defended. Their anger smoldered. Some whispered of rebellion, others of betrayal. Yet orders were orders, and so they held their line, their guns silent but ready. The tension reached its peak when scouts reported movement on the edges of human space. Enemy fleets gathering in the shadows. Warlords preparing a strike. Humanity watched closely, their sensors sharp, their admirals wary. The council whispered in private. If the enemy tested them, if they dared attack, humanity would answer with fire. On the alien homeworld, children pointed at the human battleships glowing in the night sky. Their parents pulled them close, whispering prayers to gods old and new. They feared what was coming. For protection was never free. Protection always drew the fire of enemies. And already they could feel the storm building. The alien captain who had rescued the child sat alone in his quarters, the child asleep nearby. He stared at the stars, his thoughts heavy. He had not meant to change the galaxy. He had only chosen mercy once. Yet now that choice carried weight greater than any fleet. He wondered if he had doomed his people or saved them. He wondered if the humans truly cared, or if they only sought power through kindness. He did not know. And the uncertainty gnawed at him meanwhile. In secret chambers far beyond human reach, rival generals planned their strike. They spoke of precision, of swift destruction. They would shatter the protected species with one crushing blow, and when humanity rushed to defend them, they would bleed humanity dry. For every shield has its breaking point, and they meant to find it. Across the galaxy, the air was thick with waiting. No battle yet, but the promise of one. Fleets positioned, civilians prayed, soldiers sharpened blades and checked weapons. The galaxy had seen many wars before, but this was different. This war was not about territory or resources. It was about a child, about mercy, about whether humanity's word meant more than their guns. And in that fragile pause, in that breath before the storm, the legend of the child grew. Stories spread faster than truth. Some said the child had been chosen by fate. Others said the child carried power greater than weapons. Whatever the tale, it gave hope to the weak and fear to the strong. For if one small child could command the shield of humanity, then what else might humanity do? The silence could not last. The storm was already moving. Fleets would clash, blood would spill, and the promise made by the council would be tested in fire. The aliens who once saved one small human, now found themselves at the center of a war larger than anything they had ever known. Their skies filled with human warships, their future bound to the fate of a single child. The stars waited, cold and eternal, watching as mortals prepared to decide the future with fire. The question was no longer if war would come, but when, and when it came. The galaxy would learn whether humanity's protection was a blessing or a curse. The fleet stood in silence, steel giants in the dark, their guns quiet, their shields glowing faintly against the cold of space. Humanity had promised protection, and the galaxy waited to see if that promise would hold. Then, without warning, the silence broke. It began with a shadow, a fleet that should not have been there. Cloaked ships sliding through the void, their signals masked, their engines dim. They moved like predators among drifting asteroids, watching the alien homeworld from afar. These were no scouts, these were assassins of empires, chosen to test humanity's vow. Their orders simple: strike fast, strike deep, destroy the very people humans had sworn to protect. On the alien homeworld, life went on in uneasy peace. Farmers tended fields under skies watched by human warships. Children played with crude models of the ships that now filled their horizon, yet unease clung to every street. The people whispered that enemies would come. They whispered that the humans would not stay forever. They whispered that doom was only waiting, and doom came. The hidden fleet ignited their engines, cutting through the void with sudden fire. Missiles streaked toward the alien world, warheads burning like falling stars. Cities trembled, alarms wailed. Human battleships moved instantly. Shields unfolded, guns roared. The first wave of destruction was caught and broken, the skies lit with fire brighter than any sun. The people below screamed and prayed. The humans fought like wolves protecting their young. Their cruisers darted between enemy fire. Their dreadnoughts unleashed storms of plasma that shattered hidden ships in seconds. But the attackers were relentless, wave after wave. Cloaked destroyers appeared from the dark, slamming against human shields, forcing the defenders back. For every enemy ship destroyed, another emerged from the void. In the council chambers far away, reports streamed in. The speaker rose with fury. The promise had been tested, the protection challenged. The council ordered every nearby fleet to converge. They shouted for vengeance. They shouted for proof that humanity's word was not empty. The galaxy was watching, and humanity would not be seen as liars. On the alien ship where the child lived, the alarms rang. The crew scrambled to battle stations. The captain stood tall, his dark eyes fixed on the stars beyond. He knew what was happening. He knew his people were under attack. He held the child close for a moment, then gave the order for his ship to move, not to flee but to shield a civilian transport. His crew obeyed without hesitation. They had chosen long ago to follow his mercy. Now they followed his courage. The child did not fully understand the chaos, but they felt the fear. They clung to the captain's armor, their voice small, asking if it would be all right. The captain did not lie. He simply placed a hand on the child's shoulder and told them to stay near, his eyes heavy with the weight of a war no child should see. Above the alien world, the battle raged. Human ships burned. Enemy fleets cracked under the storm, but still they pressed forward. One strike group broke through the defensive line, their target not the cities but the great council tower of the alien world. They meant to shatter hope itself. They fired, the shot never landed. A human dreadnought, already burning from heavy wounds, broke formation, its engines screaming. It hurled itself into the path of the enemy fire. The blast tore it apart, its crew vanished in flame, but the tower below remained standing. The people of the alien world looked up and saw. They saw humanity bleed for them. They saw humanity die for them. Their fear turned to awe, their doubt turned to belief. The enemy fleet realized too late that their test had failed. Humanity was not bluffing. Humanity was not weak. Humanity had sworn protection, and protection was being given with blood. Their lines faltered. Their ships fell one by one, until the survivors fled into the dark. Engines burning, their mission broken, but the damage was done, cities scarred, fields burned, thousands dead yet alive. The alien people wept in streets filled with smoke. They wept not only for their own but for the humans who had fallen for them. The story spread instantly, carried by survivors, by broadcasts, by whispers across the stars. Humanity had died to protect aliens, and the galaxy could not believe it. In the council chamber of humanity, the speaker's voice was iron. They declared the attackers enemies of humanity. They promised vengeance, not just defense. Fleets were already moving. Humanity was preparing to strike back, and this time they would not wait for another test. The alien captain stood in silence after the battle. His ship scarred, his crew weary, the child asleep in his arms. He looked upon the human warships drifting among wreckage, proud even in ruin. And he knew the war was no longer the same. He knew humanity had bound their fate to his people's survival, and he knew enemies would never forgive such a bond. In distant halls, rival generals cursed. Their gamble lost, humanity had not broken. Humanity had risen. They swore vengeance. They swore they would tear this alliance apart, but already they feared, for they had seen the truth. The humans would fight not only for themselves but for others, and that made them more dangerous than ever before. The stars bore witness as the smoke cleared. The promise of protection had been tested in fire and blood, and it had held. But the cost was heavy and the war had only begun. The child who had started it all slept in peace, unaware that their life had just changed the course of empires, unaware that betrayal had lit a fire that would spread across the galaxy. The galaxy did not wait long for humanity's answer. The betrayal had carved scars into the alien homeworld. Burned fields, broken towers, graves still fresh with both alien and human dead. The Council's vow had been tested, and humanity's blood had been spilled to keep it. Now the time for defense was over. The time for vengeance had come. From every colony, from every fortress, fleets gathered, warships rising like storms from the void, carriers bristling with fighter wings, dreadnoughts armed with cannons so vast their recoil shook entire sectors, cruisers sleek and fast, destroyers hungry for battle. The largest mobilization in a century. Humanity was not merely answering an attack. Humanity was declaring to the galaxy that no betrayal would go unanswered. Admirals stood on their command decks, their eyes hard, their voices steady. They gave orders that rippled across light years. They called for retribution not just on the ships that had struck the protected species, but on the empires that had given them shelter. No corner of the enemy would be safe. No star too distant, no fleet too strong. Humanity would strike them all. The people cheered, their anger boiling over into cries of war. Colonies that had suffered loss after loss finally felt fire in their hearts. Not fear, but fury. Mothers who had buried children whispered that now the killers would pay. Fathers who had seen homes destroyed clenched their fists and swore vengeance. The protected aliens too raised their voices, no longer doubting humanity. They called the humans their shield, their guardians, their avengers. The child who had started it all watched from the alien captain's ship, small and silent, their eyes wide as they looked at screens filled with the image of endless fleets moving together. The alien captain stood nearby, arms folded, his face grim. He knew what was coming. He knew the galaxy would bleed, and all because of one act of mercy, yet he did not regret it. When the fleets finally moved, they moved as one, a tide of metal sweeping across the stars. The first targets were the outposts of the betrayers. Small stations hidden in asteroid fields, supply depots tucked near forgotten moons. Humanity fell upon them like fire. Plasma cannons melted metal into rivers. Torpedoes cracked stations apart. Fighters swarmed through the debris like angry hornets. In hours, entire networks of enemy supply collapsed. But this was only the beginning. The true strike came when the dreadnoughts arrived, their guns blazing with energy that turned night into day. They smashed enemy fleets that had gathered in defense. Whole armadas burned under their fury. Every enemy world within reach trembled, their leaders stunned, their generals silenced. They had thought humanity soft, blinded by mercy, but now they saw the truth. Humanity had not grown weaker, humanity had grown stronger. For now they fought not just for themselves, but for another. The Council broadcast their message across every channel, their words cold as steel. They declared that betrayal would never be forgotten, that the galaxy would know the cost of striking the innocent. They warned all empires that humanity's shield was unbreakable, their fleets unstoppable, their promise eternal, and those who doubted had only to look at the burning remains of the betrayers' strongholds. In hidden chambers, rival warlords shouted in fear. Some demanded retreat, others demanded peace, but the proud ones swore to fight. They gathered fleets of their own, but already cracks formed in their unity, for not all were willing to face humanity's wrath. Not after seeing entire sectors fall in days. Back on the alien homeworld, the people watched human fleets unleash their vengeance through live transmissions. They wept not with sorrow but with awe. They whispered that no empire had ever defended them so fiercely. No empire had ever given blood for them so freely. They began to teach their children the names of human ships like prayers. They lit fires to honor the dead crews who had fallen for their world. They began to believe truly, fully, that humanity was not only a protector but a savior. On the battlefield, the enemy broke again and again. But humanity did not stop. They drove deeper past defenses, past strongholds, their fleets unstoppable, their fury unending. Space itself seemed to shake as battle after battle ended with human victory. The betrayers had awoken a storm, and that storm swept them away. Yet among the fire and triumph, a shadow still lingered. The alien captain saw it in the child's eyes, in their questions, in their silence. For while humanity struck with power unmatched, the child wondered why mercy had led to so much death, why one act of kindness had caused rivers of blood. They asked if this was their fault. The captain knelt beside them, his voice low. He told them no, that blame belonged to those who betrayed. That kindness was never wrong, even if the galaxy feared it, but far away, beyond the reach of human guns, beyond the burning sectors, others watched, silent and patient, darker empires, ancient and waiting. They saw humanity's fire. They saw humanity's promise, and they began to plan. For vengeance breeds vengeance, and no war, no matter how fierce, ever ends clean. For now, though, humanity stood triumphant, their fleets victorious, their promise unbroken, their word written in fire across the stars. The betrayers scattered, their empires broken. But the war was not done. It was only shifting, changing, preparing for the next storm, and in the center of it all, one child slept in peace aboard a scarred alien ship, unaware that their rescue had set in motion battles that would decide the fate of countless worlds, unaware that the legend of their life was already being carved into the memory of the stars. The fleets had returned from battle scarred but unbeaten. Human warships drifted like titans across the stars, their hulls scorched, their cannons still smoking. The betrayers had been crushed, their stronghold shattered, their fleets scattered into silence, and yet even in victory, the air was heavy, for the cost was vast, and the fire of vengeance had not ended the war. It had only changed it. Across colonies and alien cities alike, whispers spread of the child who had started it all, the child rescued from the wreckage, the child held by an alien captain's hands. Stories grew like vines. Some said the child carried destiny. Others said the child's voice could move armies. In every story, the child was more than human. More than a symbol, they were hope wrapped in fragile flesh. The council knew this, the admirals knew this. Even the alien leaders knew this. And so they called for the child. They wanted the child to speak. Not just to humans, but to aliens. Not just to one world, but to the galaxy. For words now carried as much weight as fleets. The alien captain did not like it. He had guarded the child as his own, kept them safe from the storms of war. Now they wanted to place the child before billions. He feared it would break them, but the child surprised him. When he told them of the request, the child only nodded, their small voice calm. They said they wanted to speak. They wanted to tell the truth. The day came and the galaxy waited. Screens across human colonies flickered. Projectors across alien cities glowed. Warships paused in orbit. Even rival empires tuned in. Curious, wary, afraid of what might be said. The chamber was filled with leaders, generals, counselors, soldiers, and citizens, all eyes on the small figure who stepped onto the platform. The child looked fragile, their frame thin, their clothes simple, but their eyes were steady. Behind them stood the alien captain, silent, tall, a shadow of strength. Before them waited billions of eyes. The child opened their mouth, and the galaxy listened. They did not speak of war. They did not speak of vengeance. They did not speak of fleets or blood. They spoke of the moment they were lifted from the wreckage, of strange arms carrying them gently, of warmth given when they were dying. They spoke of fear turned to trust, of hatred turned to kindness, their voice soft but clear, every word echoing deeper than any gun. They said mercy was stronger than fire. They said kindness was braver than war. They said that one act had changed the fate of two species, that one decision had shaken empires. They did not beg for peace, they demanded it, with a purity only a child could hold. The chamber fell silent. Soldiers wept. Counselors bowed their heads. Even admirals, hardened by decades of blood, felt their eyes burn. In alien cities, people cried in the streets. In human colonies, families held each other close. Across the galaxy, enemies who had sworn to hate paused for just a moment, their rage cracked by the voice of a child. But not all hearts softened. In dark halls, rival warlords sneered. They spat that no child could break the chains of war. They whispered that humanity was using the child as a tool. They vowed to strike again. They vowed to drown hope in fire. Yet even they could not deny the tremor in their own ranks. For their soldiers had heard the voice too. And some now questioned orders. The alien captain watched from behind, his chest heavy with pride. He had seen the child grow from fragile silence into a voice that shook stars. He knew the galaxy would never see them as ordinary again. He feared for them. For symbols were loved but also hunted, yet he would not let harm touch them. Not while he still breathed. The council broadcast the child's words again and again. Every colony, every ship, every world replayed them until they burned into memory. The child became a beacon, their face carved into banners, their voice repeated in songs, their story told to children who clutched wooden models of warships, repeating the legend of the one who had turned enemies into allies. In the fleets, discipline shifted. Soldiers who once cursed the aliens now saluted them, not because of orders but because of belief. They had heard the child speak, and belief was stronger than command. Among the protected aliens, too, the change was vast. No longer did they whisper of fear. No longer did they doubt humanity's vow. Now they called themselves brothers and sisters to humans. They carried human flags alongside their own, and yet in the shadows danger grew. The enemies who had been beaten were not destroyed. They rebuilt in secret, their rage sharper than before. They whispered that the child must fall, that the bond must be broken, that the symbol must be silenced, their plots spreading like poison through the dark. But for now the galaxy leaned toward light. Fleets stood guard not just as conquerors but as protectors. Humanity and their new allies stood side by side, and above it all the child's words hung like stars, reminding all who listened that kindness could change destiny. The alien captain placed a hand on the child's shoulder as the speech ended, the roar of cheers rising from billions. He leaned close and whispered that they had spoken with more strength than any warlord. The child smiled faintly, their eyes bright, and in that moment the captain believed, truly believed, that perhaps the galaxy could change. Yet the stars remained cold, the silence between them deep, and somewhere in that silence enemies sharpened their blades, preparing to test once more whether mercy could truly stand against fire. The war had not ended, but something greater than war had begun. Across the stars the story of the child spread, told in whispers, sung in songs, carved into steel hulls of ships and etched into the hearts of soldiers. They said one act of mercy had changed the course of empires. They said one child had forced humanity to draw a line in fire, and from that line the galaxy would never turn back. In human colonies, families spoke of the child as if they were their own. Children repeated their words in classrooms. Soldiers carried their name into battle like a shield. In alien cities once ruled by fear, banners flew with the child's image beside the human crest, markets filled with carvings of small hands reaching toward armored palms. Every corner of society held the story. Every heart carried its weight on the alien homeworld. Statues rose, simple but powerful, showing a child wrapped in alien arms, showing humans standing guard with warships overhead. The people knelt before those statues not in worship, but in remembrance. They whispered that kindness had saved them. They whispered that humanity had made them more than survivors. Humanity had made them allies. But legends are dangerous things. They inspire, they unite, but they also draw the gaze of those who hate, far beyond the rim of known space. In the black halls of forgotten empires, old eyes turned. They saw the rise of this bond between human and alien. They saw fleets gather not for conquest but for protection, and they feared it. They feared a galaxy united by mercy, for mercy was harder to break than steel, harder to corrupt than power, harder to silence than fear. These watchers whispered to one another. They swore that the child must fall, that the legend must be broken before it grew too great. For if mercy spread, their dominion of terror would crumble. They began to plan in silence, their claws reaching into shadows, their spies moving toward human space, patient, waiting for the moment when the legend could be undone. Meanwhile, humanity and their new allies built stronger bonds. Fleets trained together, human admirals standing beside alien commanders, soldiers learning each other's languages, warships flying in formation not as enemies but as brothers. The void itself seemed brighter with their unity. For the first time in centuries, humans fought not only for survival, but for something greater, for a promise, for an ideal, for mercy. The child grew older, their steps surer, their voice stronger. They traveled between colonies and homeworlds, speaking to crowds not of war but of peace, not of vengeance but of trust, and everywhere they went, hearts softened, hands reached out. Enemies lowered weapons. The alien captain never left their side, his shadow always guarding, his gaze always sharp, for he knew the child was no longer only a child. They were a symbol, and symbols were hunted. The council too changed, once filled with voices of rage and pride. Now it spoke often of honor, of promises kept, of the duty not only to rule but to protect. They still commanded fleets. They still prepared for battles. But their words carried a new weight, and many whispered it was the child's voice that guided them. Yet in the quiet corners of the galaxy, storms gathered. Broken empires rebuilt their strength. Warlords swore that the alliance was a chain around their necks. Mercenaries took contracts to disrupt trade. Assassins were paid to silence voices. The darkness was patient but alive, waiting for the moment to strike. Still, the legend grew faster than shadows every time an enemy whispered hate. 1,000 more repeated the child's words every time a city mourned. Another raised banners of unity. Every time fleets clashed, new bonds were forged in blood and steel. And so the galaxy changed, slowly but surely, shaped not only by guns and ships but by the echo of a voice. A voice that said mercy mattered. A voice that said kindness could command more power than fear. The child who had been saved now carried the hopes of billions. The alien captain who had chosen mercy became a hero among both species. Humanity stood as protector not only of their own, but of all who dared to show compassion. On the edge of known space, the stars were cold and endless. And from beyond those stars, something stirred. Watchers from darker realms, beings who had seen countless empires rise and fall. They leaned closer now, curious, hungry, fearful, for they had seen legends before, but never one born from the rescue of a single child, never one that united so many so fast. They whispered that if this legend was allowed to grow, it might challenge even them. Back in the heart of Allied space, the fleet stood ready. Humanity and their new brothers guarding not just worlds but ideals. Their warships gleaming like beacons, their engines humming with promise, their cannons silent but ready. Above every hull flew the memory of the vow carved into steel, etched into souls. The child looked out from the window of the alien captain's ship. Stars stretching forever, their reflection faint on the glass. They did not know what the future held. They only knew that mercy had changed everything. They only knew that the galaxy was no longer the same. The captain stood beside them, silent as always, his presence strong, his promise unspoken but unbreakable. And in that silence between stars, in that fragile peace before new storms, the legacy of the child was already carved. Not in stone, not in steel, but in the hearts of those who believed. And though shadows moved and enemies plotted, the legend of one saved life would outshine the dark, carrying hope across the endless night, a hope that would echo as long as stars burned.